Naples, a city of stunning architecture, ancient history, and breathtaking beauty. But behind those sunlit streets lies a world ruled by blood and fear. In the shadows of this city, Italy's most dangerous mafia, the Camorra, fights a war that has claimed countless lives. It's a war not fought on battlefields, but in alleys, bars, and family homes. Neighbors turn into enemies. Friends vanish overnight. Money, loyalty, and revenge fuel a cycle of endless violence. This isn't fiction. It's the brutal reality that shapes daily life in one of Europe's most dangerous cities. Tonight, we take you deep inside Italy's deadliest mafia war, where silence is survival, betrayal means death, and power is worth killing for. This is the story of Naples' criminal underworld, a place where blood buys respect and fear rules stronger than any law. Naples, a city that dances between beauty and chaos. Tourists see the pizza, the sea, the music. But beneath the surface lies a darker rhythm, the heartbeat of the Camorra, one of the oldest and most violent mafia organizations in the world. Unlike Sicily's Cosa Nostra or Calabria's 'Ndrangheta, the Camorra isn't a single family. It's a collection of dozens of clans, each ruling their own territory, each ready to kill for control. For decades, these clans have fought a hidden war that turned neighborhoods into killing fields. From the crowded streets of Scampia to the narrow alleys of Secondigliano, power is measured not in politics, but in blood. Young boys are recruited as soldiers, families are destroyed by loyalty, and silence becomes a way of life. In the early 2000s, Naples descended into one of the bloodiest chapters in its history, the Di Lauro clan war. What began as a power struggle inside a criminal empire soon became a full-scale street war, claiming hundreds of lives. The police called it a feud. Locals called it survival. This is more than a story of crime. It's a story of a city trapped between poverty and power, fear and defiance. A city where the line between right and wrong has long been blurred. In this documentary, we'll uncover the truth behind Italy's deadliest mafia war, expose the corruption that allowed it to thrive, and reveal how Naples became both a victim and a survivor of its own underworld. Long before the rise of modern organized crime, Naples already had a secret kingdom, a place ruled not by politicians or police, but by men who lived in the shadows. These men called themselves the Camorra, a brotherhood that began more than 2 centuries ago inside the dark, overcrowded prisons of 18th century Naples. What started as a group of small-time thieves and gamblers slowly transformed into one of the world's most dangerous and unpredictable criminal networks. The Camorra's early purpose was simple: survival. In prison, they formed alliances to protect themselves, to control smuggling, gambling, and black market deals. But when they returned to the streets, they brought this organization with them. They created a code of loyalty and silence, one that would shape the identity of Naples for generations. They called it the system, a shadow government that operated in plain sight. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia, which followed a strict pyramid hierarchy, the Camorra evolved differently. It became a collection of independent clans, each one controlling a neighborhood, a business, or a smuggling route. These clans didn't always cooperate. They competed, argued, and killed each other for dominance. But together, they built something terrifying: a decentralized empire fueled by greed, violence, and survival. In the early 1900s, Naples was already a city full of contradictions, rich in art and culture, yet poor in opportunity. Corruption was everywhere. The Camorra took advantage of this chaos, infiltrating the city's construction contracts, gambling rings, and black markets. Every business paid its share. Every politician knew who truly controlled the streets. The Camorra didn't need to hide. It was part of the city's fabric. After World War II, as Naples tried to rebuild from the ruins, the Camorra grew stronger. The war had left thousands jobless and desperate, and the government's grip on law and order was weak. Amid the ruins and hunger, the Camorra offered something the state couldn't: money and power. They provided loans, protection, and work, all funded through smuggling, extortion, and theft. For many, joining them wasn't just a choice, it was survival. In the 1950s and 1960s, cigarette smuggling became the lifeblood of Naples's underworld. Ships carrying contraband cigarettes docked secretly at night, and entire communities made a living distributing illegal tobacco. The Camorra taxed every shipment, every crate, every packet sold on the streets. By the time the government noticed, the Camorra's grip on the city was absolute. Police who tried to interfere found themselves threatened or bought off. Judges who refused to cooperate were silenced, permanently. But the Camorra was never content with small profits. In the 1970s, as the global drug trade exploded, they saw a new opportunity. Cocaine and heroin began flowing into Italy through secret routes connected to South American cartels. The Camorra seized control of the Naples ports and built a distribution empire across Europe. The money was staggering. Millions earned weekly, hidden in legitimate businesses or laundered through construction projects. Power, however, always comes with consequences. The more money the Camorra made, the more its internal rivalries deepened. Younger and more ambitious leaders began to rise, impatient men who didn't want to obey the old rules. The organization's structure, already fragmented, began to splinter further. Small wars erupted between rival clans, each trying to seize control of profitable territories. Naples was turning into a battlefield. The police called it a criminal wave, but for locals, it was simply life. Children grew up seeing bodies in the streets, hearing gunfire at night, and learning that silence was the only way to stay alive. The Camorra became both protector and predator, feeding on the same communities it claimed to defend. Still, for the powerful bosses at the top, it was business as usual. They attended weddings, donated to churches, and lived in luxury villas, presenting themselves as men of honor. But their wealth was built on blood. Every decision, every deal, carried the price of another life. By the late 1980s, Naples had become a city completely under the shadow of the Camorra. From the docks to the drug markets, from politicians' offices to police headquarters, the Camorra's influence ran deep. The organization had transformed from a local gang into a multi-billion-euro criminal empire. But inside that empire, resentment and greed were growing. The balance of power was fragile, and soon it would shatter, igniting one of the deadliest mafia wars Italy had ever seen. The foundations had been laid. The world just didn't know it yet. What began as a prison brotherhood of smugglers had become an unstoppable force, one that ruled Naples from the shadows and prepared to tear itself apart in the pursuit of total control. By the 1990s, Naples was a city boiling with tension, and at the center of its criminal storm stood one man, Paolo Di Lauro, known by everyone as Ciruzzo o Milionario. He was not born into wealth, but he built it through fear, intelligence, and absolute control. Di Lauro rose from the crowded streets of Secondigliano, one of Naples' poorest districts, and transformed it into the headquarters of a multi-million-dollar drug empire. Di Lauro was different from other Camorra bosses. He didn't seek attention, fame, or chaos. He was quiet, strategic, and business-minded. While other clans wasted money on power displays, Di Lauro ran his organization like a multinational company. His lieutenants were his managers, the dealers, his employees, and the product, cocaine, his gold. Through connections with South American cartels, Di Lauro's organization controlled most of the cocaine entering Naples. The drugs were distributed through a network of hidden apartments, lookouts, and dealers who operated 24/7. Each district had a boss, every boss answered to Di Lauro, and every euro went through his hands. At its peak, his empire earned millions per week, flooding Naples' streets with both addiction and money. But absolute power in Naples never lasts forever. As profits soared, so did envy. Inside De Lauro's own ranks, younger lieutenants began to question why they risked their lives, only to see the boss take the lion's share. Many of them had built their reputations through violence and wanted more independence, more control, and more wealth. Among these ambitious men was a group that would soon become known as the secessionists. The first cracks appeared when De Lauro began centralizing the drug trade, controlling who could sell, where, and for how much. For his soldiers, this meant less freedom and less profit. For De Lauro, it was about discipline and loyalty. He ruled not through emotion but through fear. Anyone who broke the rules was punished swiftly and brutally. For years, this strategy worked, but fear breeds resentment, and resentment breeds rebellion. The turning point came when several of De Lauro's most trusted lieutenants, men who had once sworn loyalty to him, decided they no longer needed his permission. They wanted their own routes, their own networks, and their own empires. They stopped sending De Lauro his share and began operating independently. To the outside world, it seemed like just another internal dispute, but inside Naples, it was the spark of a war that would burn the city for years. At first, De Lauro tried to control the situation with negotiation. He sent envoys to talk, to warn, to remind his former men who the real boss was. But the secessionists had tasted independence, and they weren't going back. What began as quiet defiance soon turned violent. Dealers were attacked, shipments were stolen, and De Lauro's men began disappearing. The streets of Scampia and Secondigliano, once under De Lauro's strict rule, turned into zones of tension. The police, aware of the growing instability, watched closely but were powerless to stop it. The Camorra's code of silence, omerta, made gathering evidence nearly impossible. No one spoke. No one saw. Yet everyone knew that something big was coming. By the early 2000s, Naples was on the edge. Paolo De Lauro, now in his 50s, tried to maintain order from the shadows, but his empire was slipping from his control. The secessionists had declared independence not just in words, but in blood. One by one, De Lauro's loyalists were assassinated. His dealers were hunted. His name, once untouchable, became a target. For Naples, the balance of power that had kept the city's underworld stable was gone. The Camorra, once united by profit, was now divided by pride and revenge. The war that followed would shock Italy and the world. A war that turned neighborhoods into killing fields and proved that in the Camorra, no empire lasts forever. Paolo De Lauro's rise had built an empire of money and fear. But his downfall would ignite the bloodiest chapter in the history of Naples's criminal underworld. It began quietly, a single gunshot echoing through the narrow streets of Scampia. One man dead, one message sent. But in the world of the Camorra, every killing demands a response. Within days, revenge came swiftly. Another body, another warning. What started as a dispute between Paolo De Lauro and his rebellious lieutenants soon turned into an all-out war that drenched Naples in blood. The media called it the Scampia Feud. The people living there called it hell. Between 2004 and 2006, Naples became the stage for one of the deadliest mafia wars in modern European history. Rival clans, the loyalists of De Lauro versus the breakaway secessionists, fought openly for control of the drug trade. Streets that once buzzed with markets and laughter turned into battlegrounds. Gunmen on scooters roamed the neighborhoods, their faces hidden by helmets. They didn't wait for night. They killed in broad daylight. A man walking home with groceries could be mistaken for an enemy and shot in front of his family. Shops were burned down. Entire apartment blocks were abandoned. The people of Naples lived in constant fear, never knowing who would be next. The secessionists, led by a young and ruthless generation, refused to follow De Lauro's old rules. They were wild, unpredictable, and desperate to prove their power. They controlled their territories with brutality, executing anyone suspected of being loyal to the old boss. Their violence wasn't strategic, it was chaotic. But that chaos worked. It spread terror faster than bullets ever could. Di Laro's men fought back, trying to restore order, but every move they made only fueled more bloodshed. Retaliation became the only language both sides understood. Naples' morgues overflowed. In 1 year alone, over 130 people were killed. Some criminals, some innocent. Mothers found their sons dead in the streets, victims of mistaken identity. Ordinary people vanished for witnessing too much or saying the wrong thing. The city's skyline, once defined by church towers and old houses, became marked by police helicopters circling above. The sound of sirens became as normal as church bells. Yet despite hundreds of arrests, the killings continued. The Camorra's grip on Naples was so deep that the state could not reach its core. Every witness feared to speak. Every resident knew silence was survival. The Italian government launched a massive crackdown, sending elite police units into Scampia and Secondigliano. For weeks, armored vehicles patrolled the streets, raiding safe houses, seizing drugs, and arresting suspects. But the problem was bigger than guns or cocaine. It was cultural. The Camorra wasn't an organization you could destroy by force. It was a way of life that had shaped Naples for generations. For Di Laro, the war became personal. Once known as the businessman boss, he now found himself hunted by police and betrayed by former allies. His empire, once an organized network, was collapsing under its own bloodshed. As the authorities closed in, Di Laro went underground, hiding in secret apartments and safe houses across the city. Yet even from the shadows, he continued to command loyalty from those who still believed in his rule. The secessionists, on the other hand, were too young and reckless to control their newfound power. Infighting began among their own ranks. They started turning on each other, each one hungry to be king of the ruins. What began as a rebellion against Di Laro slowly descended into an uncontrollable spiral of violence. By 2005, Naples had reached a breaking point. The army had to be deployed. The government could no longer deny what was happening. This was not just a mafia feud, but a civil war inside the city. Cameras from across the world arrived, capturing the images of burning cars, grieving mothers, and heavily armed police in neighborhoods that looked more like war zones than Italian streets. Eventually, Paolo Di Lauro was captured in a dramatic raid. His arrest brought temporary relief, but not peace. The war had already changed Naples forever. Hundreds were dead, thousands traumatized, and entire generations scarred. The Scampia feud proved one horrifying truth, that in the Camorra's world, there are no winners, only survivors. And even survival comes at a price paid in blood. To truly understand how the Camorra has survived for centuries, you have to look beyond the violence, into the system of corruption and silence that protects it. The Camorra isn't just made up of gangsters with guns, it's a web that stretches into businesses, politics, and everyday life. It's a machine that feeds off poverty, fear, and opportunity. In Naples, everything connects back to the system. From street-level drug dealers to high-ranking politicians, everyone plays their part, willingly or not. The Camorra doesn't only control drugs, it controls construction, waste management, transport, and even fashion. Its money is everywhere, hidden behind legitimate businesses that act as fronts for laundering criminal profits. Politicians seeking votes often turn to Camorra-controlled neighborhoods for help, trading power for influence. Businessmen pay bribes to win contracts, and police officers sometimes look the other way to protect their families. It's not just about fear, it's about mutual benefit. The Camorra offers jobs, cash, and favors in places where the government has failed. For many poor families, working for them feels like the only way to survive. The organization's real power lies in its ability to make people dependent. Every bakery, market, and construction site in certain areas owes something to the clan in control. Shopkeepers pay protection money, not because they want to, but because saying no can mean losing everything. And if they report it, the law can't protect them. The Camorra's rule is faster, more brutal, and more effective than justice itself. Even when leaders are arrested, the network never truly dies. Sons replace fathers, friends become bosses, and rivals turn allies when profit demands it. It's an endless cycle. The structure is so flexible that when one clan falls, another immediately rises to fill the void. The state destroys the branches, but the roots remain untouched. Journalists who dare to expose the truth often pay with their lives. Some live under constant police protection, while others have been murdered for revealing too much. Witnesses who cooperate with the authorities must flee Naples forever. Those who stay rarely survive long. Silence isn't just cultural, it's a matter of life and death. For the young, especially those growing up in the poor districts of Scampia or Forcella, the Camorra represents power and respect. With little education and few opportunities, many boys see the local boss as a hero, a man who drives expensive cars and commands fear. It's not just crime, it's identity. The Camorra becomes a dream for those who have nothing else to believe in, and that's how the system endures. Poverty fuels desperation, desperation fuels recruitment, and recruitment fuels the empire. Every generation inherits the same struggle, trapped in a loop where the mafia replaces the government and violence replaces justice. The Camorra doesn't simply survive, it adapts. When one business collapses, it moves to another. When drugs are seized, it shifts to real estate or online fraud. It evolves faster than the system meant to stop it. That's why, even after decades of arrests, raids, and international crackdowns, Naples's criminal network continues to thrive. It's more than a criminal group. It's a culture of survival, one built on blood, fear, and the silent acceptance of those who have learned that in Naples, the system always wins. The war may have ended, but its ghosts still haunt Naples. The streets that once ran red with blood have quieted, yet the fear remains, lingering in the air, in whispered conversations, in the wary glances of those who still remember. The Di Lauro clan has fallen, many of its leaders locked behind bars, but the Camorra's story is far from over. In truth, it never ends. It simply changes shape. After the Scampia feud, the Italian government launched one of the largest anti-mafia operations in history. Hundreds of arrests were made. Police seized mansions, businesses, and millions in cash. For a moment, it seemed like Naples could finally breathe again. But beneath that surface calm, the system rebuilt itself. New names appeared, new alliances formed, and the Camorra learned to operate smarter, quieter, and deeper underground. Today, Naples looks different. Yet the shadow of the Camorra still stretches over it. The violence may not be as visible, but it's there, hidden in politics, construction deals, and the economy. Modern clans don't always fight with guns. They fight with money, influence, and control. They've moved into new industries, counterfeit goods, cybercrime, and waste management, turning crime into legitimate business. For the people of Naples, daily life continues between beauty and danger. Tourists fill the squares, the smell of pizza drifts through the streets, and children play football in alleys that once echoed with gunfire. But locals know the truth. Peace here is fragile, built on silence and fear. In neighborhoods like Secondigliano, young men still dream of becoming bosses, because in their world, the Camorra still represents power and respect. Poverty and corruption still feed the same cycle. Yet there are those fighting back. Brave journalists, police officers, and local activists risk their lives to break the silence. Schools and community groups work to give children alternatives. Education instead of crime. Opportunity instead of fear. It's a slow war, fought not with bullets, but with hope. And while progress is real, it's fragile. Every victory against the Camorra feels like one step forward in a city that has been pulled backward for generations. The legacy of the Scampia feud remains carved into Naples' soul. Families still mourn their dead. Mothers still light candles for sons lost to a war they never chose. The scars are invisible but deep, passed down through stories, warnings, and memories. Naples stands as both a victim and survivor of its own history, a city too beautiful to forget, yet too wounded to ever truly escape its past. The Camorra may not rule the streets with open violence anymore, but its shadow lingers in every deal made behind closed doors, every promise whispered in the dark. This is the lasting truth of Italy's deadliest mafia war. It never truly ended. It simply changed form. The guns may have fallen silent, but the system still breathes. And as long as poverty, corruption, and silence exist, the Camorra will find a way to rise again. Naples remains a city caught between light and darkness, between hope and history. A city where every street holds a story, every face hides a secret, and every heart beats with the memory of a war that still echoes in the night.